First of all, you really want to avoid anything that's considered a crime of moral turpitude. In immigration law, we have something called crimes of moral turpitude, and that's usually things that society just considers to be bad. Like society just thinks these are faux pas. So these are usually things such as a rape charge. Any rape charge or convictions look really bad for you. Any theft charges are usually crimes of moral turpitude. Any fraud charges, anything to do with fraud, if immigration or even if whether you did it or not, even if immigration finds out or makes a conclusion that you did something fraudulent for the purpose of obtaining an immigration status, those are things that are considered fraudulent. Anything that society considers to be a negative, like a no, like anything that society would say like, no, why would you do that? That's considered a crime of moral turpitude. All right. Some other common things that people don't realize that you always want to avoid, things that could happen on a daily basis, like when you go out on the weekends, is resisting arrest. Resisting a police officer or resisting arrest really looks really bad on your record, and it is considered a crime of moral turpitude. All right. And some of these things that I'm telling you are waivable. Like some of these, if you have them on your record, you can waive them, get them waived off your record, and still be able to adjust your status. Some of them not. Okay, so again, you want to avoid things like resisting arrest, DUIs, driving under the influence, especially more than one. So if you're starting to have like 2, 3, 4, 5, you really want to slow down. Definitely get some help, okay? Because that in the long run really could affect not just your ability to get a green card, but also your ability to become a U.S. citizen. So DUIs, especially more than one, more than two, you really want to avoid that. The most common one that we see in a context when you get married here in the U.S. is, or in the context of a home, is domestic violence. Domestic violence is a crime of moral turpitude. It's something society says, no, we don't like that. In other words, that's a crime of moral turpitude. So you always, and I always even tell, especially my clients, like if you're in a relationship where it's your spouse, you and your spouse are always fighting, like with words, or it's becoming violent, or you know, whenever you guys argue, your spouse wants to put their hands on you. Whatever you do, don't put your hands back on her. Secondly, if you're getting to that place where every time you're together, you're fighting, you really want to avoid the situation where she calls the police on you. He or she calls the police on you, because if they call the police on you, it's your word against hers. And usually they believe the U.S. citizen, whether they're male or female. And this happens too in the context, like even if your U.S. citizen spouse is a male and you're a female, and they call the police on you and say that you put their hands on them, even if you're the woman, if they're the U.S. citizen, you typically, that's the person that they're gonna believe. So I'm getting somewhere. I'm saying that that's a common problem I see with a lot of clients. A lot of people end up picking up a domestic violence charge from a spouse, from somebody that they're actually married to. And usually I always say, you kind of saw that coming. You kind of saw things escalating to that point. And so before it gets to that point, you either need to think about separating, leaving that house, or something. Because once your spouse calls the cops on you and claims that you put your hands on them, it's usually really hard to convince them otherwise. And for people who end up with a domestic violence charge, usually the only way out of that is usually like if your spouse decides to drop the charges.